Second.
Motion second to approve the minutes as published. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next is approval of the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda as published, right, Mayor? Second.
Motion second to approve the agenda as published. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Persons wishing to address the CRA, I just got one from Mr. Warren. Mr. Warren, you want to speak?
Sure. Mr. Mayor, Council, CRA, I've looked at the 47 pages that's attached to the CRA agenda. I think the $120,000 is a great ask. My problem, my issue arises with the 6 phases, right? It talks about 6 phases in that particular packet. I'm trying to understand, Mayor and CRA Council, for the life of me, how does the worst end of the project is last instead of first? How do we continue to go down this road, right? Because I know what Sylvester's always raising and saying about things, but when you start looking at the evidence of the worst freaking side of Marion Street is North Marion Street. Why is it last on the list? I take very real issue with that. You should always focus on the worst. I have no problem with the $120,000 ask. I do have an issue with the order in which the phase is going to begin. The phase 1, 2, 3, and 4, they have all this research and all these pictures, and they already have decided how they want to do it. But there's no information on phase 5 or phase 6. Phase 6, meaning from Rural Street all the way to 100. I find that I live in that area. So I find it to be very disrespectful and insulting unless somebody's going to come up here and give a heck of an explanation why that side does not deserve the first attention. We've gone through this back and forth. I had to beg y'all for almost 3 years to get some Christmas lights. We got some rinky-dinky stuff the first time. Hopefully this year we'll get something better. We had to protest to make the city-owned park be fixed by the city, which is Sallie Mae Jerry. So when does it cease, Mayor? We talk about peace. We talk about not putting a negative image on the town. I'm willing to work with you all in that regard, but something has to give when it comes to the Black community now. This ain't gonna be no one-sided issue where I pipe down and you all keep running away with the train. We're gonna have to work this thing out fairly, and the community that's been neglected the most should now be getting the most and should be getting that attention first. That's all I'm gonna say. But we need to vote on reorganizing the order of the phase in which this money is gonna be allotted and allocated. Phase 6 should be phase 1. And there's pictures of phase 6 area. I can leave with you, Mayor. It looks horrible.
Sure. Okay, and the only other one I have is Mr. Bowden.
Mr. Mayor, just to follow up on what Mr. Warren said about Sallie Jerry Park, I would like to have an update. I don't know if you all been by there. I had the opportunity to drive by there one night and the lights was on and I almost had an accident. I thought I was on another part of town. I mean, it really looked good. The grass is good. The equipment is up. So I'd like to know when do you anticipate opening? What's the status of the property adjacent to that? Will we intend to turn it into a parking lot? Because if we don't get that property, then while it's gonna look good and we're gonna be happy to see it, but it really won't be functional in all reality unless we get that parking done, you know. And you know, I know people say we don't want to take anybody's property, but sometimes you do what's in the best interest of the community. And that's what eminent domain. I don't like that term, but that's what it's about. You know, when a road is coming through, you say, listen, you know, we're gonna work out a deal because it's the best interest of the community that you do at that property. So we need to move forward with the property adjacent to that. And I'd like to know the status of the signage that's going.
Mr. Jefferson, do we have a CRA meeting in about a week?
No, we're not scheduled.
We're not scheduled, okay.
What is it?
What is this?
The CRA would sometimes meet as the other committee, the advisory committee.
You mean the committee, well, it does not have.
Right.
Committee.
I just have a question. What is in phase six? What do you have proposed in phase six?
I don't know, that's what the presentation is. That's all I have signed up. We have done the new business approval of the 2020 CRA annual report. That was our packet. Anybody got a motion as to that? I think we have to approve it to get our CRA funds. We need a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, could you repeat what you just said?
It's the CRA annual report. It's just that in the packet that,
I move for the approval of the 2020 CRA annual report.
Second.
got a motion and a second. Discussion of council. Ms. Ashton, the roll, please.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson? Mr. Hill? Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
And Chairman Witt?
Yes. Okay, now we have presentations, downtown beautification project, Ms. Tina Roberts. Thank you for coming, doing the presentation.
Thank you very much. I did have a presentation with slides. Are they prepared? They are not prepared.
They were not provided to me.
They were provided, yes, they were. But, okay, well, it's gonna be hard to be able to let the audience understand what I'm talking about. Maybe I can turn around and just show the pictures.
That was,
Mr. Mayor,
yes,
I apologize to Ms. Roberts. Can we try to get the presentation on the screen? Because that's one of the reasons I asked you to repeat your, the item that we were on. The agenda wasn't on the screen, and now Ms. Roberts' presentation is not on the screen. So I just, if we can't make it happen, I understand, but
Well, I know that all city council members have received it, and I know that it is online in the agenda packet, and I know that I submitted it in June. And so they had all the information, and today at 11, I submitted 3 other items to be added. So it has been requested, and I thought it would be here tonight. So are you saying absolutely no, you don't have it? You can't get it?
I don't have it. Was it an email that was sent?
It's in the,
It's the same packet that was emailed to you previously when we were going to have the meeting. It's the same packet. The meeting was canceled due to the storm. It's been a week or 2 back.
Okay, one moment, please.
The packet is online as well. Now, your new documents were not incorporated into the packet. It was too late to read that
That's
packet, but they did get it. Everything was sent out today, though,
Okay.
about 2:30 this afternoon.
I don't know if you've had time to look at that or not. I guess I'll go ahead and start. My name is Tina Roberts, and I have served on the beautification committee for the city of Lake City for the past 6 years. And tonight, the workshop that I'm going to present or explain to you is a plan. It's the beginning of a plan to revitalize our historic downtown. The entire project and the $120,000, now this particular map shows you the CRA lines. And the beginning being on South Bay Avenue, and it runs all the way to North State Road 100. This is a request for your consideration to use the CRA funds to complete or your city budget to complete. It will make a visual impact to our city streets. It's understandable that additions and deletions may be necessary because there are several phases. There are 6 phases, the way we have it right now. But it is a plan that we want to move forward to improve our downtown area. The plan includes the removal of Drake elm trees. Now, it also includes replacing the sidewalks that need to be replaced, any shrubbery that is dead, and replacing that with the self-watering planters. And we'll talk more about that later, but I want you to know about the Drake elms. And if we had the slide presentation, you would be able to see that if you look into the town, Lake City, this is exactly what you see. It's nothing but trees. These Drake elm trees are overgrown. These trees grow 50 feet tall and 40 feet wide. Okay, great. Oh, thank you. They do not have adequate room to grow. The trees are leaning. The limbs are covering the lighting, which is on the lamp posts, which provides our night lighting for downtown walking. It interferes with the traffic lights at the intersections. It's damaging the store awnings. They are a nuisance. The leaves and seeds make a mess. There is a disease that they have that is created by longhorn beetles. The tree roots affect the sidewalks, which is a safety hazard. The shrubbery is dead and it needs to be replaced. Lake City does have a tree protection ordinance, and that is the one thing that I found out when I presented to the CRA committee. Mr. Young let me know about that, but I have read the tree protection ordinance, and it does state that the council can remove trees. And there's also a section in the ordinance that states the city does not have to replace 3 to 1 for each one removed, nor does it need a permit. Now, that tree ordinance that I'm speaking of, one in particular, there's several, but most of it is in section 104. It says 104-44, public tree care. The city shall have the right to plant, prune, maintain, and remove trees, plants, and shrubs within the lines of all public streets, alleys, avenues, lanes, squares, parks, and any other public grounds, as may be necessary to ensure public safety or to preserve or exchange the symmetry and beauty of such public grounds. The board may remove or cause to be removed any tree or part thereof which is an unsafe condition or which by reason of nature is injurious to sewers, electric, water, gas lines, or other public improvements, or is affected with any injurious funguses, insect, or pest. So with saying that, I want you to know that it can be done. There is a total of 36 of these Drake elm trees. So do I have a clicker or you're gonna slide?
Next page.
Okay, next slide. So the trees, what we're wanting to do every time that you see a tree, one of these Drake elms, they would be replaced by a self-watering planter. And we'll get more into that later. Now, to answer the question of why I have this, I've done this design for the first part of the town, but I haven't done for the other, because it was a lot of work and it does have to be a plan and you've got to start somewhere. And the plan is the heart, the downtown area is the heart of downtown. We have in phase 1 that I suggested, which starts at the south end gate going all the way to Keaton's. That's called blocks 1 to 5. I'd like to show you that right now. So if you'll go to the next slide, you'll see these are the trees that are, you've got the city gate on the right-hand side, and then you've got these trees. You'll see that they're leaning. You'll see that the lamp post is growing up into all the trees. That's pretty much on all of them. You can also see that there are 8 businesses on the other side of the street. You can go to the next page. This is block 1. And they have Lisa Lee's, the law office there. They have Southern Sisters, and they have Lake City Cellular. This particular picture shows that there are businesses in downtown that do want to beautify our area and make it nicer to walk on the streets and to shop in the shops. Next slide, please. This is the diagram, and this is what I think that may be upsetting to some. But again, this is an example. This is a plan, the beginning of a plan of how we feel like it can happen. So basically, if you're looking at this, every single place there's a tree, there will be a planter. And these planters will be, they're 31 inches wide and they're 26 inches tall. But where I have the word combo, that means that there would be one 41-inch wide and two 31-inch wides. And these would be, like I said, called combo into this, the diagram here. The shrubs on the left, they would be removed, and planters, another combo would be added there. Okay, let's go to the next block. Block 2. Block 2 does not have any trees at all to remove. And I have found, after doing a little bit of asking, that at the time, George Ward had a business and he was on the city council at that time, and he did not want those trees. They are a nuisance, and you'll see some more pictures of that. But they don't have any trees to remove, but they do have shrubbery that needs to be replaced. There are 8 businesses thriving on this block. Okay, go to the next one. I want you to just really get a good look at this picture, because this is the block that has no trees. And if you can see that it's just so clean and not with the trees hanging over onto the buildings. It's a nice clean look. They do need to replace the shrubs in this area. Go to the next slide, please. You can see the shrubs there that are decayed and some that are missing. Then you can get another good look on the right-hand side of the street, where this is the place we're talking about, the areas that have mildew, that have mold. They need to be resurfaced or they need to be pressure washed. But we want that nice clean look all the way down the street. Next slide. This is an eyesore, which is right there on that second block, along with more shrubbery. Go to the next one, please. All right, so that was block 2. And again, on the diagram, it is everywhere there is a tree will be a planter, a self-watering planter. Okay, block 3, you've got City Hall on one side, and you've got the Blanche on the other. All of the trees there have issues with the lamppost and the trees being infested with these beetles. And again, here you should be able to see how dark and mildewy the sidewalks are. On the next slide, you'll see this is 3 trees that need to be gone in front of the Blanche. If you look around the square there where that tree is, there's shrubbery missing. There's a different type of shrubbery at the bottom left. And then on the right is the daily trash that you see put out by these trees. Next slide. Another shot of how the tree is growing into the Blanche balcony and how it looks just looking down the street that way. I want you to be sure that you see these big trees that are just there doing nothing, serving no purpose. Next slide. Here's the, another hand-drawn map, just to show you where there would be a combo or where they would be, single self-watering planters. Then going on to block 4. Block 4 has 5 businesses, and then there's an additional 5 businesses that are on Veteran Street. The Gulf Coast Financial building is the one that is leaning there towards it. They have a North Florida Family Counseling, and there's a tree that's by the corner of the red light. Right as you cross the street, you go to Marion Street. The tree is completely leaned over. It needs to go. Also on block 4, on the next slide, you will see that there's Beagle's parking lot, the Decker Law Firm, the Tavern, and Marion Street Cafe. The owners of both, and I've spoken with all of them about the trees, they are in all agreement that they want them gone. I have signed signatures from them saying they want them gone because of the mess that they make. They're covering the store signs. You can't see the name of Frankie's Place because of the tree that covers his area. And then go to the next slide, please. And here again, it's just a rough draft of where the actual self-watering planters would be placed when these trees are gone. Now, the 5th block, there are 6 businesses on this particular block. It's Frankie's Place, where I told you it covered his whole sign of his business. Fred's Leather Shop, which I know there's been an accident. He told me, I don't know how long ago it was, but someone fell, tripped on the sidewalk right in front of his business. The sidewalks are bad. The sidewalks are worse on the north end of town than they are right where we're talking right now, but they are bad. You've got a bakery, a House of Fades, one empty building, then you've got a photography, and then Nana's Nook and Kitchen, Keaton's, where they make keys. If you'll go to the next slide, you'll see that's in front of Fred's Leather Shop down on that end of town. And you can see there on Keaton's how the tree has blocked and is touching the building. The next slide. Okay, this one is where Hare's has her shop and the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and there's an Ola's Beauty Shop. Well, the tree is right into the Ola's Beauty Shop second story, and you can see right in front of Hare's how it's leaning there as well. And then on the next slide, you'll see, again, another diagram that just shows everywhere a tree is gone, there will be a self-watering planter. And this is what we're calling phase 1. Phase 1 would be, after working with the Director of Public Works, the Public Works Department, Mr. Thomas Henry, and speaking with him, he would remove the Drake elm trees on Marion, beginning at the South City Gate, which is known as blocks 1 through 5, ending at Keaton Locksmith. Again, these drakes need adequate room to grow. They're leaning, they're moss infected. And what we would like to do is have those cut down. And then when they're cut down, then they would use the red bricks to fill in that area, which would be like a rectangle, which is where the planter would actually be. This was done this building right outside your parking lot. If you go out there, you'll see about 6 of these rectangles and our squares, and that is where trees have been removed in years past. So that is the look that it would be. And you've got the red brick that's somewhat all the way down the sidewalks in some areas. It's incorporated with the concrete, there's brick. So that would be phase 1, is to get those trees cut down first. Once the trees are down, The bricks are in place. The sidewalks have been cleaned. Then comes phase two, where we will put all of those planters in those areas. These watering planters, the 41 inch and the 31 inch holds 18 gallons of water. They have 13 inches deep. They weigh 25 pounds. There's 13 inches of soil that would be in there. So they could not be stolen, I do not think. Their weight without anything in them is 25 pounds. They have a wick system that releases the water, which would require the Public Works Department to have perhaps a water wagon that would come along every 2 weeks and water them. The actual planter itself has like a side spout on it. So it would just be to come with the water hose and you fill it up and you're gone. That's it. Then you come back and check it. But it would be no responsibility of the actual merchant to do it. And to get those planters, the cost would be right around $22,000. And that's about $150 to get the flowers or the plants and plant them in there. Now we had phase three. Again, blocks 1 through 5 is the heart of the town. That's why we started there. The next part would be the next blocks, which would start at the new building that you just purchased to be part of City Hall. And it shows you very clearly in the paper, here's a Drake elm. This Drake elm is covering the building that was just purchased for business. That's just another example. So we would go to the next blocks, which would start there at the old State Exchange Bank, which would be your area, and go all the way down to the north city gate. So basically what we're trying to do is to get gate to gate first, where the businesses are. There's 28 in blocks 1 to 5, and there's 11 in blocks 6 to 10. The next phase, again, would be on those blocks from 6 to 10, would be to remove the trees, put the pavers in, clean the concrete or repair it that's cracked, and put the planters there. And we did put phase 5 and phase 6 from the city gate to Baya and the city gate to 100. I have no idea what can be done there. 2 things that I've thought of was we could take up the grass and we could put the brick pavers there like they are in other places in town to give it a little better look. There's nothing to attach anything to. There's nothing to, you've got the big concrete posts that are lights, and there are the signs that are up that just say historic downtown, I think is what they say. But they would go up, and you could put hanging basket planters on those. That's a possibility. I have no clue. I haven't gotten that far. I didn't decide that railroad had to be last. I wasn't picking on that. I was wanting to go from the places that have businesses that we are trying to help. So how I came up with 120,000 or how we came up with that is we felt like if 25,000 could do blocks 1 to 5 and 25,000 could do blocks 6 to 10, which covers gate to gate, then we would have 35,000 to do the north end to 100, Railroad to 100, and we would be able to have 35,000 to use from this gate on 90 to the VA, Baya, I guess is what it would be. As far as what goes first, that doesn't really, well, it takes it. I agree totally that the north end of town needs improvement, but that is not what we're addressing tonight. I've asked for that amount of money so that it could be looked at and it could be done, and we could get the money while the money is there. I understand there's $290,000 in the CRA funds, or it was last month. If we go ahead and get the 120,000, we don't have to keep coming back. We know that we've got 35,000 that we can spend from railroad track to 100 and from Baya to 90. That was the reasoning of the 120. I think there's another slide maybe about the earth planters. This is, if you'll go to the next one, it's just some writing for me. This is what the planters look like. If they're black, they're like a black stone. They have a lifetime warranty. They're made in the USA. You can skip on to that bar there is the hanging basket I was telling you about. One more, slide one more. There. Okay, here, this is just some questions that you might have, and some of you may have already had the chance to go and look at these planters, but they do have a lifetime warranty. They are proven and guaranteed that their wicking system works. They have a built-in internal water overflow system. They have a drain plug. They, their construction is low density polyurethane. They stack for storage, and they are winterized. It also goes on saying that they have been rated as the #1 selling and recommended commercial self-watering planter that there is. The other thing that I had for you was in these planters, the flowers. I have a list of all the flowers that we would plant, and I have a list of all the shrubs that we suggest, which would have to be viewed by a committee to be sure they will work for y'all. We know they will work on our end. And as a special note, I needed to tell you that the Lake City Garden Club has agreed to plant the plants in the planters when they get them. And again, the people that are in business want to see a change in downtown Lake City for the better. Do you have any questions?
Mr. Mayor, I have a couple questions for Ms. Roberts. The first question that comes to mind, are there any historical requirements that would need to be met with this project? I know we do have some historical buildings, you know, in the areas that we're talking about. Are there any requirements? Has someone seen that or thought of it from that perspective?
To not remove the trees because of the historical building?
Well, no, to not remove the trees, but more importantly, just that the planters and the concept is in line with what would be expected. I know we have some things where we limit paint colors, for example.
Right.
And so I just want to make sure that what we're talking about, that's been.
It would be lovely. I promise. It will be lovely. It will look great.
Well,
I will not
you're
do that.
not violating anything historically.
No,
speaking.
there's no violations that I know of. The only concern was these historic buildings need to shine. They need to be seen. And people, ladies, love to go to different towns to shop. And I mean, I go to Georgia, to Tifton a lot, and their streets are gorgeous. They're pleasing to the eye. They're not with something that's barcading you of don't come in, which is what these Drake elm trees are doing.
And Mr. Mayor, you have to forgive me, I've got several questions, so I'm just gonna run through them. And it's okay, Ms. Roberts, if you don't know the answer, I'm asking because I don't know the answer. Drake elms, are they native to Florida? Do you know?
Yes.
They are native to Florida? And then, any DOT requirements that, you're concerned about moving, the planters? I know, the sidewalk, is there any, obstructions to DOT that you're aware of or have you looked at?
Not that I'm aware of. In fact, DOT told me that Jacksonville just got rid of a whole row of the Drake elms that are near Union Street because of this exact same reason. The improper, they're dying.
Sure.
They're just dying. You can look and see.
Another question that I had that came to mind during your presentation was time frame for each phase projected or the total project in general. Do you have an estimated time frame? If you got to go ahead in a perfect world, start to finish, what we would be looking at?
Well, again, that was something that I worked with Mr. Thomas Henry, who is the Director of Public Works. And when we talked, he suggested, because traffic will have to be rerouted when it's time to cut the trees down. And that is the first step. And in the real world, you could start Monday next week on cutting those trees. But he suggested that we start block by block and cut the trees down, was one suggestion, and reroute the traffic. The other suggestion that was made was to just go ahead and get all the Drake elms down at one time. Just close the streets as needed and just get them all gone would be step one. Step two is to get the concrete on the sidewalks and to put the pavers in place where the trees were.
So those are the only questions I have.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
Mr. Mayor, one of the issues I think is we did something a lot of cities did in the past. We planted a lot of female Drake elms, and that's why they're shedding like they are. But it's not an uncommon problem, and it's only going to get worse. They're going to get leggier, look worse, and eventually the beetles are going to finish them off. So now would be a good time. I like the idea of just getting rid of all the trees and just doing that first. And then the other part, I think it makes a lot of sense. And that way it's uniform all the way, sign to sign. I would like to see further what the other 70,000 is going for. I know this plan looks pretty detailed. I'd like to see, going up to the VA and then to the other end, what's that going to look like?
Well, I have no idea because it needs to be something that's a community group works on together. That's not something that your beautification committee can just come up with just like that. I mean, it took a long time to just
So
do
a
this.
recommendation would be to have a committee for both of those areas.
Absolutely.
And then we would already have allocated the funds for those
Yes.
two areas at the same time as we.
Yes. And
So-
it could be done as soon as the idea is here, the money would be there and it could be done. It wouldn't be to come back again and say, hey, can we have a little more money to finish up?
And if we get the right groups working on those two ends, it could even take place simultaneously to the other project.
That is correct.
I don't know how we would set that kind of group. I don't
Well,
know if
our
we already do that.
CRA advisory. And we could do a subcommittee if we don't want to use the whole group. But since the CRA funds, I think that'd be appropriate.
I'd like to see more community involvement, especially, I like that other end down there going to, I don't know what we can do down there. Not even thought about it driving.
Yeah,
To the
it's
VA.
hard.
Well,
there's just, I don't know.
We
I
could
don't think
have, a CRA meeting and have the public come in and put their input into it, their ideas. And then we could go from there and see if we can branch off to subcommittee or something like that. But that would be start that Mr. Jefferson chairs.
The more involvement, the better.
Well, I know that, and speaking with Mr. Heffenberger before he left, that he told me that Water Power and Light committed to installing and putting electricity on the north.
Right.
None, any sufficient electricity down there. So I'm not sure where we are with that, or whether that can be done. I don't think that it's a commitment to place electricity down the north.
Need to check on that.
Well, are you talking about the concrete, the big concrete posts that have the lights on them?
I'm not sure where they were gonna actually install it, no, but there's none on those poles, concrete poles.
So no lighting.
Straight line.
I don't know what the cost of the lamp posts are or what it is to run power down there, but I mean, of course, that would be, great if you could do that.
Jay,
Ms. Roberts, I agree with you. I agree with you on taking the trees out. I passed on 90 and I noticed you and a few more ladies at this gate here. Y'all were really into it and dressing it up. But Ms. Roberts, what I'm asking is that same money, instead of starting on this end, it's bad now. It's bad. If you could just go, I mean, I'm quite sure you know how bad it is, but instead of starting here or down there, put that energy that way, because the way downtown is now, at once upon a time, those trees wasn't there. And they put those trees in, I guess, again, to beautify downtown. But that was a bad choice to put those trees there. But again, I'm asking that if you would go north instead of starting here and south.
I just don't feel that we'll have to agree to disagree on that, because we need to first, we finished Wilson Park. You did your CRA, approved all of that you've done has just been great. Logically, if there's 28 plus 11 businesses and they're right here by all of the CRA things that you've done by the Lake Soto and Wilson Park.
So with Miss Roberts, okay, like you say, they finished Wilson Park, money to spend there. When is it gonna be some money spent on the north side?
Well, that isn't up to me.
I mean, I'm just saying though, but just like you came to us tonight for here and south, why not come before us for north?
I did. I included you, and it doesn't matter if you're phase 5 or phase 6.
It matters, Ms. Roberts. It matters because this end is okay. I mean, it's okay, but down there, it's not okay.
Okay, so are you saying that you're fine with gate to gate, but then go railroad to 100?
I'm talking about north. Just north.
Well, I do know, and I can tell you, and Mr. Warren can
And let me stop you right. Let me stop.
tell you this. I have helped,
Well, listen, I'm gonna say this in your behalf because it was an issue with, like I say, when I saw you all down there, dressing that up, and the issue came up about the gate on this end.
Right.
I think you and the same ladies, y'all went down there and
We did.
put a little bit more effort down there.
We did.
hey,
And that's all I'm asking. Is the same energy, if not as much energy, put some energy where we can have that end of town. Look like this end of town. When you coming south from north, from that way, it's awesome.
I agree. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you. I agree. I just, the heart of this city needs to be addressed first, gate to gate.
But why can't, I mean,
What can we do? I mean, do you have a plan?
no, ma'am, I don't.
Well, if you knew that you had $35,000 and you could come up with a plan, I don't understand why there's a complaint on that.
Ms. Roberts, like I say, again, I'm not trying to argue with you.
Yeah.
All I'm at is just see it from our point of view on that. That's what I'm.
Mr. Mayor, can I say something? Before we actually get rid of the trees, can we see if we're in legal stance? Can I have David Young to speak to that building code enforcement?
Yeah.
mind if I have a copy of what you're giving?
Yes, ma'am, you already have it. I sent it to you, the tree ordinance right out of it.
Oh, okay.
But I do have extra copies if you would like.
Mr. Young,
It's
Mr. Young.
a good idea.
Mr. Young, you can give her mine.
Okay,
It's a good idea for
I've got,
Mr. Young to pass that information that we will not be able to see the public. I mean, I got a problem with that. You gotta take my time to come up here. And they gonna present you with something that's not a public record. I should be, as a citizen, be able to follow along.
well, I don't know how to fix it back.
But how you fix it, you put on the screen.
Or do you need to put it online? Sorry. Medium. Uni. Not uni.
it's Columbus. Where's it, Lake City?
In the county? Here we go, for Lake City.
Or
Chapter, so if you can do like print chapter. An icon. Or you can save it, I don't know, it's easier for you. So save it as a chapter there. You can save it to wherever you want to save it, if you want to print it as a PDF.
it's just Article 1's reserved, so it's Article 2, 31. It's-
Yes.
There you go.
If you go to section 104-46, you've got the official street trees of the city of Lake City. And if you go to the medium trees category, you'll find Drake elm being listed there, and this is one of the protected trees in the city. It's not up to me to voice an opinion as to whether those are nasty trees leaving a mess. I can only go by what the ordinance calls for. The city council was supposed to have set up a tree board, which it never did. It's never been set up as far as I can find. The trees, you can remove them, but there's a list of criteria that they have to follow. They have to be diseased, which I can find no sign of disease on any of these Drake elms down here. The bark's peeling because that's what Drake elms do. They're like a snake. They outgrow their skin and peel off the bark. There's moss on them, yes. Just about every tree in the South has moss. It can create problems, but so far as I can see, there are no disease happening. by our ordinance. We have to examine the trees by this book, Evaluation of Hazard Trees in Urban Areas, the second edition. When using that, I could find no sign of disease as it's shown and described in the book. The trees might need pruning or trimming, but they are not causing a hazardous situation. They are not interfering with traffic lights or pedestrian vehicle sight lines. They are not creating problems with utilities, and they are not creating structural damage to the building or other appurtenances, which like sidewalks. As most of you know, if you have a tree in your yard that's close to your driveway or sidewalk, it's upheaving from the roots growing under it. We do not have that happening on our sidewalk. Our sidewalks are cracking. So the roots are not causing the problem. Now, to say that these trees are gonna last a while longer, yeah, they will, but I don't know how much. They will eventually start getting disease, and they will eventually come out. But what I'm saying is right now, there's nothing in the tree ordinance to allow for them to come out right now. Now, do we need to change the ordinance? That would be up to the city council to direct us on that.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
So I have a question, and the reason my question to Ms. Roberts about Drake Elms being native to Florida and Mr. Young pointing out that it's a tree that's on the list in our ordinance is, if we remove those trees, is there a possibility if the trees are removed that we replant Drake Elms in a more suitable place within the city limits? In other words, if the trees are moved from a location where they're maybe not desirable to a location where they would be desirable, or replace one for one, is that an option?
It's an option. We can replace 2 for 1 in the ordinance.
The ordinance is 2 for 1.
Yes.
Mr.
It has to be one of the approved trees. The species.
What's
Yeah, go ahead.
So my last thought on that is I know that we give away trees every Arbor Day. And so it would seem to me that if we include Drake Elms as part of that giveaway, potentially, as long as we have the correct amount at a minimum, the city would be able to meet the intent of maybe what Mr. Young's speaking about. That's just my thought. Mr. Sampson, sorry to cut you off.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question too. So in this ordinance, which I haven't really had time to familiarize myself with, but here I'm seeing that no closer than 20 feet of any corner can you plant a Drake elm. But this picture here very clearly shows that these are well within 20 feet of the corner.
Yes, sir.
So we're already in violation of the ordinance just by the location of the trees currently.
Yes, sir, but it's not creating a hazard because they're being kept trimmed up high enough to where vehicle and pedestrian sight lines are being maintained.
But it's still closer than 20 foot from the corner.
Yes, sir.
So the rule says, so the rule says no closer than 20 foot from any corner.
Yes, sir.
So we planted them in violation to begin with, and now they're still in violation. In addition, it says requires horizontal offset of 20 foot from the nearest overhead conductor. And there was one picture here that shows that we don't have that either. Now it looks like we have a little less than 20 foot, and that might be something we could bring the canopy down. But if we're gonna pick which ordinances to follow, maybe we should at least follow that where it says, so they're closer than 20 foot, that means we can remove them without replacing them maybe. I don't know. Well, how do they get there that close to the corner?
Because it was approved by the predecessors on planting of the trees there.
So it was approved in violation of the
It's
ordinance.
called a non-conforming.
Okay, that's the
In
point.
other words,
So
it's there now, can't make it change.
So they didn't conform with the ordinance when they planted it. Because if I read farther, it looks like the council had the ability to overcome the ordinance. It says here that there's, operation review by city council 10442. It looks like the council can make a ruling on the trees. Is that correct?
No, sir. It's not. Get back open to there. What section was that?
42.
42. Too far.
It might be 44.
6,
I'm trying to read this really quick here. I think it might be 44, the public tree care.
42, 44, yeah. Public tree care?
Yeah, the city shall have the right to
The
plant,
city
prune,
shall
maintain,
have
or
the right-
remove.
Yes, sir, but you have to read the whole statement. The city has the right to plant, prune, maintain, remove trees, plants and shrubs within the lines of all public streets, alleys, avenues, lanes, squares, parks, and any other public grounds as may be necessary to ensure public safety and to preserve or exchange the symmetry and beauty of the public grounds. Boards may remove or cause to be removed any tree or part thereof that is in an unsafe condition, or which by reason of its nature is injurious to sewers, electric, water, or gas line, or other public improvements, or
So,
is affected with injurious fungus, insects, or pests. It's not interfering with sewers, electric, water, or gas lines.
well, I don't think that's even the point. I think we can just get right to the word beauty.
No symmetry, it doesn't say beauty.
Well,
There's not symmetry either.
we can amend the ordinance to
Yeah, the
But
symmetry and.
I don't think it needs to be amended. I think this allows for us to take action because it says here to preserve or exchange the symmetry and beauty of public ground.
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
I would ask if the city attorney has read that and if he has an opinion.
In June, the city administration discussed this topic and it was instructed in my office to start an ordinance removing the necessity of a tree board. I believe that you'll see that in later this month. It was reviewed in my office for a second time last week. That will take care of the tree board issue. As to protected trees, they are a protected tree, however, they may still be removed. 104-44 allows for provides regulations concerning the public tree care. And as it was pointed out, the city has the right to remove trees even if they are simply being removed for the symmetry and beauty of such public grounds. There's a period at the end of that sentence, and so therefore you should stop and consider that sentence in its entirety. Mr. Young goes on to point out some other issues. Those would be in addition to symmetry and beauty. Those would deal with the injuries to sewers, electric, water, gas lines, other public improvements, and fungus, insects, or pests. So those would be in addition to a finding that the trees need to be removed for the symmetry and beauty.
So, Mr. Mayor, after listening to the city attorney's explanation, it would seem to me, and I don't want to jump the gun here, but it would seem to me that the city has the ability to remove the trees. And it would seem to me that a reasonable offset to that is to replace those trees through our Arbor Day program so that we still have the same number of Drake elms in our community, and we've not diminished the Drake elm in some way. So that just seems like a way forward for me that is reasonable. I would hate to be a business owner downtown and have paid money for a sign to try to attract people to my business, and they can't see my sign because of a Drake elm. That also perhaps hinders their accessibility into my business. We spend a lot of money to attract business downtown, Mr. Mayor. So I would think to me, it would be prudent to remove the trees and then replace them in a place that is more conducive to their growth.
We're not doing any more public comment.
Oh, yes, we are. I'm on I got item 4 on my paper, man. You can check that with I got item 3 and 4 on my paper. Review it.
All right. That's short. Okay, Mr. Young, we'll sit down. We're gonna take public comments about 3 or 4.
I agree with that.
Say something?
You had a whole presentation.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Sampson, I think. Speak.
Okay, so in addition to that, I agree with that completely. I think it's wrong for us to dictate these tree covering up. And if you walk through it, I don't know how many of y'all walk downtown, but it's horrible. I mean, you got those little berry things get stuck in your shoes. It's tracked all over. So I think it's time for the trees to go.
And Mr. Mayor,
And I like the Arbor Day idea. Let people plant where they want them.
another thought, and Ms. Roberts maybe can speak to it if I'm misunderstanding here. But I think the ask is for the allocation of funding, and I think that there's still work to be done on the plan as our discussion has kind of shown. And I think one of the hiccups was the Drake Elm. So after listening to the attorney, I think we can resolve the Drake Elm issue if everyone's in agreement. Or if we might need to vote on that, take a motion on that. And then the true question is the allocation of the funding, I believe, and that probably shouldn't get lost in our discussion.
I want to ask council, do y'all want to take more public comments? So, y'all,
I don't have any need, Mr. Mayor.
I mean, comments from the public.
I'm fine with public comments. I don't know if
Okay.
everybody's had their opportunity.
All right, how many people want to speak? How many we got?
I want to finish.
I'll Mrs. Roberts, I'm gonna let you finish up. Okay,
I wanted to let you know about, it's a great idea to do the 2-to-1 trees. That's what Mr. Young told me. And so I went with the master gardener for a couple hours downtown. I went to him with a list of, I had 42 trees. They were promised to me by DOT. I gave him the list. They weren't the right list. And by the way, the Drake Elm is not a native to
No,
America.
it's a Chinese elm,
It
and they're
is.
from Taiwan. They're not from Florida. So
But when you say 2-to-1, we found places they weren't right. But the issue on that is wherever you plant them, they have to have water. You can't just plant it and leave it. And as far as the Arbor Day, for the past 4 years, Arbor Day has been celebrated at the Lake City Garden Club, where we honored the people. We have not given out trees in probably 10 years or so. And if we did, I would feel awful giving anybody a Drake Elm unless they had a 50-acre field that could let it grow 50 feet tall and 40 feet wide.
it's a big tree.
all right.
Mr. Mayor, let me first say I have a lot of respect for the Roberts family, and so anything that I'm getting ready to say, I'm gonna do my best to be as respectful as possible. However, I noticed Ms. Roberts, as she was presenting, she hit on some things, and I find that most of that whole presentation to be offensive to my race and be offensive to where I live.
Well,
Just hold on. I said I'm gonna be, Mayor, please.
be respectful.
Didn't I just say I was gonna be respectful? I said I find it offensive. What is disrespectful about me saying I find it offensive?
All right, go ahead.
And this is the problem, Mayor. Like some people, you stop me from talking. I have not said anything offensive other than it was offensive to me. Then you stop me. Then you're buying into my time. And then you say I can go again. Just because some people who you have respect for, and I do have respect for, they end up getting challenged, then you want to shut the conversation down. That's not fair to the other side. So my point is that because she finds one part of downtown to be important to her heart, doesn't mean that other people who look like me don't find another section of downtown that you don't decide to invest money in to be important to our hearts. That's my point. And if you really want to do something right, why don't you take the ER example, for example. When you go into the ER, guess what they do? They don't care if you're black or white. They care about the most critical issue. When you look at this situation, the black community of downtown has the most critical issue. So you spend the money where you have the most critical issue. It's horrible down there. Why is it horrible? Because most people on this council, which you've been on about the longest with Mr. Jefferson, have decided not to ever spend any real money down there until black people decide to raise hell, right? And then you don't like the flack that you get behind it, and then we have to fight and push and come up here and come up here. Then you say, oh, y'all are getting all out of control. No, we're not. You have to get out of control because you don't heal. It's like you suffer from an indifference syndrome, right? Like you don't live there, so you don't care, you don't hang around, you don't understand the culture, so therefore you have no interest or no buy-in to what we're talking about. And so my point is that though the trees come out, I don't care whether the trees that she's talking about come out, stay or go. What we're concerned about is that the order in which we are investing in downtown. You sat here along with the council and said that 100 Torero Street is also downtown.
Right.
It's a side of downtown that people live on and that people care about. And so you need to either allot more money for downtown, north downtown, meaning from Railroad to Marion Street, table this whole freaking decision, sit down as a group and be more inclusive as to how we do business, because not only white people live in this town, but black people and other minority groups. And so to have a fair and equal bite at the apple, you should be a little bit more inclusive as to how we do this process. So I'm asking, Mayor, if you really care about more than just a certain group of people, economic status or whatever the case may be, or friends or buddies, that we table this, have a group discussion and figure out how we move forward on spending enough money to make sure that all sides of downtown are being accurately treated right. That's all we're saying, buddy. And why you can't understand that and why a lot of my white counterparts can't understand that, it beats me.
I do want to add this, that even with the budget, she's asking for 120, but you're saying the most critical area you can get the leftovers, which is 30,000, 35,000. You want to spend 22,000 on some plants, on some pots, but give the rest of downtown $35,000. That does not seem right. It does seem like, we just give them some crumbs. That's what it seems like. That's what it sounds like. 22,000 on some pots, but we'll give y'all 35,000 to finish it. And then to say, I don't know what to do, that's not an excuse. That means you don't take the time to find out what to do. Y'all have a committee to do everything. Well, maybe we need the people down there to figure it out. So now we have to figure it out, but the people here don't figure it out. Y'all got a committee to figure it out. That's not right. That's not fair to the citizens there that live in this area for us to try to figure it out. But everybody else got a plan. They got a whole presentation. But we got to figure out what to do. It's sad enough we had to figure out Sally Jerry Park. We had to figure that out because nobody else had time. But I bet you nobody had to figure out Wilson Park or any other park. But when it comes to us, we always have to figure it out. And we always get the short end of the stick. We always get leftovers. And as Sylvester said, with everything, we have to come down here and fight and cry and fuss. Even with the decorations, they decorated that downtown so pretty. The only time they came down there was after we made a big fuss and blasted it all out because they threw a funeral wreath down there on the sign. And they had flowers and reindeer and everything else down here for Christmas. Like we don't celebrate Christmas. We tired of leftovers. We tired of coming up here fuss. You think we got nothing else to do but come up here and fuss with y'all? We don't want to do this, but we have to. That's the only way we get seen or get something done in our community. 22,000 on some plants, and we don't even know, are those all-season plants? How often you gonna have to buy new plants to put in there when the winter freeze them out? Then you gotta put new plants there. But we gonna spend 22,000 on some pots and give y'all 35,000 to do the whole doggone north end of downtown. Does that make sense? Does that seem fair? 120, because we got all this, and be honest, downtown don't look bad. So even if you started down here, this part of downtown still is decent, and it looks good. It don't take all that for this part. It take all that for that part, because it looks depressing. That's why we depressed over it. It's so depressing.
Okay, yes, sir.
My name's George Hudson. Okay. What I'm hearing here is way off of what has been presented. She has presented a beautification, which this young lady took the time to go out and do her due diligence, what she was appointed to do. I see no one else out here presenting. All they're doing is yelling. I see no one else that is going to walk the streets to see what they need to do and bring before this council to do anything with the money. Go out, do your work, then come up here and present it. Instead of somebody that was appointed by the last city manager. She did her due diligence. She did walk. She did walk the streets. No one else has gone out and got a price for a plan or for anything else. All they're doing is yelling. I propose.
Mr. Mayor, we gotta have order from the audience.
Yeah, we're gonna have order or we're gonna stop.
Here's what I present. Whoever the city council person is for that end of town to the middle, and the city council person from that end of town to the middle, take that $120,000 and y'all, and I'm using that to everybody, you all figured out those two city council members. Where are you gonna spend the money and how you gonna beautify it? Don't just give it to one person to do it or one person to do it. It's the city council person member that is the councilman for that part of town that needs to take it by the bull by the horns, take that allocated money and spend it to beautify the whole downtown for everybody. When you drive from north to south, from south to north, that's what we need to do. Not just one person doing only a job and nobody else doing nothing, but yet those other people that are doing nothing are yelling about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. See, it's the stuff like this. You let him talk about the other side. And the Hudson, there, Gene, they know, but they ain't important. Let me say this in conclusion. One, I think it's unfair for people to continue to vilify Mr. Warren and him speaking up for what he advocates for his community. And at some point, we have to stop that. It redirects the attention and the issues that he brings forth that are relevant. I listened to us talk about there being 11 businesses on one side and 28 on the other side. Now, I'm not the smartest person in the room. I promise I'm not. But I would believe that there's only 11 businesses on this side of town because it looks like there's only an investment on the other side of town. I think that I frequent Tavern and Howl Pattern more than anybody in this room. I preach, but I like craft beer. You can quote me on that. But those businesses are doing all right. It bothers me that the busiest black barbershop in this town doesn't have a crosswalk from their parking lot to their business. And if you're going to grow it, if we're going to talk about development and growing downtown, you got to invest. I'm not the most fit person in the room either, but you don't work out the part of your body that's the strongest the longest. You work out what you need to get strong. And so I get it, but people are disgruntled with these meetings because they seem not organized and not thought out to the fact that we should table this until we bring a detailed plan on how you equally invest and allocate the money. And I think if we do those things, we curtail some of these issues and we can move forward with what's important. And there are investors in the room. There are people who have property on that side of town who want to start a business, who want to grow a business, who need your help just to do your part. And the trees, when those, chief, don't listen to this. When the drunk folks stumble out of Howl Patters and Tavern, they are not worried about the tree. They're worried about a DUI. We have to invest where the business can grow. And there is there's limited growth on the south side. If we're going to grow it, we got to grow it on the north side and take that money and plant it. And I think that's the request, and I think that's the concern. And I think before we spend any money, we ought to have a plan that is more detailed. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah.
I'm wondering if you could take her plan in terms of the sidewalks and just extend the sidewalk development so it's just contiguous all the way down Marion Street from 100 all the way up to Bay End, so it looks uniform. And figure out what the difference in that price would be so that you could walk that same sidewalk from 100, where the Dollar General is, move the southern gate, right, from Railroad Street, extend it down to 100 to encourage then business investment and to also encourage building growth. Because what you do have then on the north end from Railroad to 100 is a lack of business growth, is a lack of building. I mean, you could build on those lots and you could build a nice building and you could have your own parking. Now, I don't know the difference between what is city, what is in private, what people are willing to sell. But ultimately, if you want development on that end, then you have to encourage private developers. I mean, you have, what was the was it Orange State? Which was later turned into a club right on the other side of Railroad. That building has been empty for years and years. You can actually encourage a business to come in there, see if they will buy that lot. Encourage Target. We have a Target warehouse. Why don't we have a Target here? Encourage Target to go right there. Encourage a big company to come in. And that's how you have to have a starter business to encourage other businesses to come along. What are your anchors downtown? What are your anchors on the northern end of town? And if you did this big contiguous sidewalk, it would bring unification. I mean, I grew up on Marion Street, and I think that it is sort of a contiguous old district. And I wonder if you did that, if you could also then get grants and you could allocate money for a larger historic district, in which then you can encourage businesses to build in a historic style or in a style then that mimicked the other buildings downtown. I mean, that's just my idea. As I said earlier, I did want to thank then Ms. Fields for the sponsorship of Richardson. Richardson is a community center down there. It does get city funding, it gets county funding, and you've done a great job with that. You could do that, and you could sort of use this project, I think, if you extended funding and you looked at how you could extend those sidewalks and those planters as a means of encouraging building development all across then Marion, essentially from 100 all the way up to the VA. And I say that saying that I really do hope that the northern half of Marion remains residential, although I don't think that's the case because I think there are just too many businesses in those old homes. But that would give a contiguous look. And you can then maybe make it the larger historic district and use that to allocate funds. And if you can get the Florida Power and Light to build the same power poles that you have down, it would look beautiful. And if you can't do that at Christmas time or the holidays, get those old-fashioned, beautiful, season greeting things that hang from the power poles and go all the way down. To me, that sounds like a reasonable possibility.
Thank you. Okay, what's pleasure of council?
Mr. Mayor, it's been a while, so I just want to make sure that I fully understand the ask. The ask is for an allocation of CRA funds of $120,000 for the beautification of downtown. Is that the ask?
I say 120. Do you know how much is in the CRA?
Well, I gave you that number,
Tina, what number did you say was in the CRA?
290,000.
Okay. All right. And they're asking for 120.
And Mr. Mayor, I know for what Dr. Essing just mentioned, I was working with Mr. Helfenberger probably since the day I came on this council about moving the historic downtown sign on the north side of town to 100. And one of the challenges is that according to Mr. Helfenberger, the city didn't have rights of way on some of the properties where we wanted to move that sign to expand downtown. I think it's important to expand downtown. But that's not what the discussion's about. Discussion's about approval of the funds for the beautification committee. So I would make a motion to approve the request from Ms. Roberts for $120,000 for the beautification committee.
I had a question, but he's got a motion, so.
If you want, I'll withdraw my motion if I was premature in making it.
I was thinking about the number that we heard, the 120, and if I broke that down right, it was 35 north, 35 south, and the difference was in the middle.
Correct.
And so we would be allocating about 70,000 without a plan. And I'm not sure, I think we need a little more information, but I think there's things we could act on immediately in the plan that really don't have a cost other than labor. I think 120 is probably going to be on the low side when you start allocating what needs to be done at these other two areas. I think it's going to be a little more expensive because they haven't had anything in the past in either of those places.
Well, Mr. Mayor, one of the things that's lost also in the discussion is the relocation of City Hall. And so that too is going to expand the walking area, for lack of a better term, of downtown as well. And so there are going to be some costs there, I think, depending if we close streets and accessibility. So, Mr. Sampson is right, a larger plan is ideal. You know, I don't know how we get there from here.
What about if we allocated funds based on receiving a plan to complete the entire project? But yet authorize the okay to get started on what we can do with forced labor? As far as like, that's what they're doing, they're cutting the trees down with internal labor.
Well, I agree with what you're saying, is that one's not exclusive of the other. I mean, we can start one, don't mean we can't start working on the other two ends. And we're not limited. Ms. Roberts is asking for 120. That don't mean we're limited to 120. If we need more to do the north end, then we can allocate that. That's our problem. That's why we're here.
Mr. Mayor, I know too, one of the concerns I will have, we'll talk about coming up with a holistic plan for, you know, for everything. You know, you don't want to overtax the beautification committee, quite frankly. That would really come back to us and come back to the city administration more than anything. To, you know, if we wanted an overall plan, it seems to me it would be prudent that we would have the administration look into that. And there is, you know, there is some cost involved with that as well, to do it right and not piecemeal it together. I think so too, but all that's part of a bigger conversations. And
well, Mr. Mayor, I like the idea of a holistic plan, but that's something that we don't have at this point. But we have to bear in mind to achieve a holistic plan. I think that, and someone has hit on that, we need to develop committees that will work on both the north end as well as the south end, and come up with a plan about what you want it to look like. And then I think that's what drives the cost, because I mean, $30,000 may not be enough to do what we need to do on either one of those things.
Right.
But I think we need a committee that will, you know, work on both the north and the south end, put together a holistic plan so that we will, you know, have some guidance and at least some estimation in terms of the cost.
Ms. Mayor, I think removal of the Drake elms is probably paramount for the businesses. I would assume, and I'm just making an assumption, and you can't leave the holes in the ground. And so I hear what Mr. Sampson is saying when he talks about if we had city crews remove those Drake elms, but then also there's going to be cost involved with making sure that we fill that area in and it's walkable. And then Ms. Roberts went even further. She said, hey, there's planners as well. So, you know, it's up to us to determine how far we want to go. Where do you draw the line? I guess the real question is, where do we draw the line? But if I were a business owner downtown and the city council had the ability to remove the Drake elms, I would want them to take action on that.
Mr. Mayor, I think another important thing is the city needs to look unified from end to end. So if we're going to put the planners in the middle, that's what's going to need to be on the other two ends. It doesn't make sense to look like three different cities when you drive from north to south. So I like the planners. I think it's a way better idea than the Drake elms. They're horrible. But I would like to see what's the cost to extrapolate that end to end. I think we could act where we could act. 120,000 is not going to cover that whole thing, I wouldn't think, just looking at this cost. I think if we go ahead and allocate that to get started, it might make sense. I do think the CRA committee needs to take care of the other committee structure. I think that's in their purview. It seems like all of this is in the CRA zone.
Right.
So I think that needs to come from that committee.
It does got the CRA funds, so it's got to come. But I don't think we're restricted to this amount. We've got the money to do what we need to do and make it look good. And I agree with the holistic stuff. From end to end, it needs to look, like splotch.
Mr. Mayor, one of the things just to remind the council of, I think it's maybe unfinished business, and Mr. Bowden spoke to it. We talked about the digital signage for Sally Mae Jerry Park. And, I don't know that we followed through and purchased that sign or not. If we've purchased it and we're waiting on install, or if we've not spent the funds to purchase. But I believe, if memory serves correct, that was supposed to be CRA funds, and that was a large amount of money as well, I believe. So we need to follow up and, say, just like we do with utilities, I want to make sure, or the CARES Act funding, I want to make sure that we're not spending the same dollars more than one time, right? So.
Let me, Mr. Caroline, no matter what the CRA does tonight, that will still have to go to the, city council.
Not necessarily, it needs to go through procurement and some other avenues.
That's if we,
What
do it. Well, the CRA committee here, we don't have to.
Not necessarily. There is a process that the city administration will need to initiate if you all decide to go forward. And that is that the city council or the CRA will need to petition for a permit to do some of this. That goes to the city administration for review. No different than the way you petition to change a planning and zoning issue or an annexation. I think it's more of a ministerial petition. But the CRA can spend its money in this manner. I do have a question as to I believe the south end, whether or not all of that area is within the CRA area. Mr. Young, Mr. Elfenberg, and myself addressed that. I was under the impression that some of that area is not in the CRA. Do you know, Mr. Young? Do you recall?
I believe the CRA runs.
Be that as it may, it would be CRA can only spend CRA area.
Right.
And so if it's in there, it's
All right.
So for resolution, we need to close the loop, I think, on this. So I think there was more money than what's being asked for. So the real question is whether or not we approve the ask of the funding. I think is what it boils down to. And to me, I think that we can do that. I'll be happy again to make that motion to approve the requested funding, knowing that there's more money in the CRA and there's more area that we want to cover, and there's as part of a larger plan. But in fairness to Ms. Roberts, she came with a plan tonight. She's seeking funding. We have the ability to provide that or not. It's our decision. So I think we need to vote on that. And we also need to move forward with the other committees we talked about in the whole.
As part of that, could we tie the formation of the other committee or the expansion of that to that motion?
Yes, sir. And I'll try to, I probably won't say it as clear as Ms. Sykes when she clarified my last motion, but I'll try to clear this up with maybe a motion. So to approve the requested funding for the CRA Beautification Committee and create a committee. Help me out, Mr. Sampson, to create a committee for the north end of downtown and the south end of downtown, outside of where the signage is currently located for historic downtown. I don't know that that's clean enough, Ms. Sykes, maybe you can.
Yeah, I don't think that's very clean. Hold on, just give me. Just give.
More words kept coming out.
Yeah, let me blow it up here, just hold on. Is this going to be a,
And I think that could be actually one committee to do all of that. It's just the CRA needs to appoint them.
But it wouldn't, but as the attorney says, though, it may, some of that area may lie outside of the CRA. And so it's not necessarily a CRA committee, it would be a committee of city.
may I ask a question of Fred? I believe the ordinances allows for the council to appoint additional committees and subcommittees. Does it matter that we are currently adjourned as the CRA board?
It does.
Yeah, so that's, yeah.
Make sure I'm understanding, you're wanting to create a new committee to establish the phase 5 and phase 6 areas, rather than remand it back to the beautification.
Or the CRA, I think.
And rather than having the CRA seat.
I think,
I think it has to go back. I don't
Mr.
think-
Mayor, I think it would be fine for it to go back to that committee for them to appoint a committee. They just need to, yeah, but it needs to happen as part of the funding.
Right.
So make sure we're moving forward.
So the CRA would do the appointing of those additional members.
They're talking about the advisory committee.
Advisory.
Are we gonna move on?
I'm almost done, Mayor.
I have to summarize.
They meet again soon anyway.
When Mr. Jefferson's called.
The committee meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, how does this sound? Motion to approve the $120,000 in CRA funds to be used for the Downtown Beautification Committee project. The motion also provides a provision for the Community Redevelopment Advisory Committee to appoint a subcommittee to address the north end of downtown and the south end of downtown outside of the signage.
Okay. That's a
Is
motion.
that your motion?
Yes.
Does
Second.
that capture everything that you wanted?
Second.
Okay. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion by council?
Mayor?
Yeah.
May we pause for a moment, take a look at the code, to look to see if a committee, what is entailed with a committee appointing a subcommittee?
Yeah.
So we'll get phase 5 and 6, rather than having to bring this back in 2 weeks.
And we've concluded that I'm not a arborist or horticulture expert, so we'll put that out there.
You're gonna get 2 of those Drake elms.
Maybe they'll suck up some of the water in my yard.
Mayor, I've attempted to review the 20-page ordinance. And I come to the provision of ordinance 21-2178, sub 6, creation of additional committees, and I don't find where a committee may create a subcommittee.
we just.
So we need to
Motion.
be covered.
Send it back to CRA, you do what the intent of this is, we can always have citizen input, they don't have to have a formal committee to do that.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, say that again, Mr. Mayor.
Send it back to the CRA for them to form a plan with this and to use citizen input to do it.
You already advisory.
We can always ask citizens to advise us, we don't have to make a formal committee on it.
Right. So we could certainly do that, Mr. Mayor. I don't want it to be lost that so are we gonna send the funding back as well? Is that part of that?
I think we could decouple that too and only fund the middle piece.
Yeah.
I think the number's 56,000. Is that right? That would
Here's the
be
thing,
the
I think we're
sign to sign.
maybe we're trying to do too much. I think maybe we should just come clean with it, and the request is for 120,000. Either we fund it or we don't fund it, and we come back.
And we do the rest of it, but do it all in conjunction with each other, but get started.
Yeah, I think we all know the direction we want to go. We'll make sure that we're inclusive of all of downtown. We know that it's a bigger footprint than what we're talking about. So I know I'm on board to make sure that, we're looking at a larger plan for all of downtown.
And a plan that looks the same end to end.
And so on the spot, maybe you're correct 100%. So I think on the spot with Mr. Coberline, it may be too much that we're trying to fit in one motion. So I think we vote up or down the request for the funding, and then we come back through the CRA advisory committee with the other part. I think, to me, it seems like we all want the bigger, all of downtown to be included. So having said all that, removing all other motions, right? We're gonna try this for, I don't know how many times, approval of the $120,000 request for the beautification committee standalone.
Second.
Then motion and second, anything further?
Can I just clarify the motion? Motion to approve the $120,000 in CRA funds to be used for the downtown beautification project, period.
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill? No? Okay. Chairman Wood?
Yes. All right. I think that's the end of the agenda, yes. Next meeting will be as needed, and we're adjourned.